Hi, I'm Emma, the Product Marketing Manager here at Street. I'm thrilled to welcome you to our webinar with Landmark, where we're going to take it back to basics and cover everything you need to know about AML. In today's webinar, we'll be talking about the latest laws on anti-money laundering and compliance and explaining what you need to do to verify your customers. Landmark will also be doing a comparison of electronic versus manual checks. Then I'll jump back on and I'll give you a demonstration of our new integrated checks. But first, I'm going to pass over to Simon, the sales manager at Landmark.
Hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm thrilled to be here alongside Street to provide you with a comprehensive overview of anti-money laundering, or AMLs as we call it, the regulations, and why staying compliant is crucial for every single estate agent. One of the fantastic benefits of using the Street platform is you can order an electronic anti-money laundering checks and land registry titles direct from the Street CRM system. This time-saving feature ensures all your checks are conveniently stored in one place, along with an easy-to-follow online audit trail for reference. Landmark are so excited to be working with Street on this new integration, and we are on hand today to guide you not only on the benefits of using the electronic checks, but also to support you on the regulations themselves. In this webinar, I will cover the essential topics to give you actionable information on the importance of AML compliance, the latest compliance laws, and how to verify your customer effectively, and the difference between manual versus electronic verification. As you may be aware, HMRC are the body that monitor compliance and estate agency with the AML regulations. The actual guidance is available on the gov.uk website, and it is important that you and your staff are aware of this guidance. You're equally aware of the roles and responsibilities each individual in your business has. You need to make sure that the leading people in the business also follow the necessary checks and improvements with HMRC, also known as a fit and proper persons test. And your business must be registered with HMRC before you can begin trading. This is essential. You must remain registered throughout trading, and it is your responsibility to keep on top of that registration. You will see from the slide here that there have been a lot of changes that have actually taken place with the guidance over the years, and this is because HMRC are placing a lot of focus on the regulations to make sure businesses are complying. You may have heard of large agencies being fined in the industry for errors with non-compliance, so it's important you get this right from the outset. So in terms of getting it right, what must you have in place? So now that you are registered with HMRC and have passed the fit and proper persons test, you need to look at creating an anti-money laundering policy. The gov.uk guidance has a list of suggestions of things that you should be including within your AML policy, such as how you will manage the risk identified in your risk assessment to prevent money laundering in your business, and who is responsible for maintaining the policies and the controls. Your policy also needs to outline what processes you put in place for verifying clients, and who the staff should report to if they deem anything suspicious. One of the benefits of being a Street customer is we can actually provide you a templated AML policy that you can then adapt to your business's needs. You also, further to this, need to have a risk assessment. And this comes in two parts. You need to have a risk assessment for your estate agency that outlines a typical client you look at and the level of risk that your business operates in. We include that as part of our anti-money laundering policy that we can provide you. But if you're a business based in London dealing with multi-million pound properties or transactions on a regular basis from overseas, or if you're a business based in Birmingham dealing with £200,000 houses or multi-million pound properties, for instance, you need to outline the market you deal with and the factors within that market. You must also then have a risk assessment for your clients. Now, this doesn't need to be a written form per se that you fill in for every client. And how you decide to store your risk assessment on each individual client is up to you. But you need to ensure you have an audit trail that every client you take on, you have made a risk-based decision on what level of checks you are going to apply or carry out on that individual. You need to make sure you're applying the appropriate level of due diligence for your client, depending upon the outcome of the risk assessment. And I will come on to that more shortly. You need to be checking if the client is politically exposed and whether they are on the worldwide sanctions list. You cannot act if someone is on the worldwide sanctions list, but you can act if someone is on the politically exposed list. However, you must carry out those two checks on every single client. You must outline who your money laundering reporting officer is for the business and how you want the staff to report any suspicious activities or concerns that they may have to the money laundering reporting officer so they can decide if they need to complete a suspicious activity report with the National Crime Agency, which is your ultimate worst case scenario if you've got someone who has got suspicious activity and you just can't get to the bottom of it. If you haven't come across completing a suspicious activity report before, it would be a good takeaway from today to have a look at the National Crime Agency website to find out what you have to do when you do it. And you need to keep all records of all checks you carried out for at least 5 years from the end of the business relationship with that client. So you may have heard the phrase KYC, to know your customer. For traditional estate agents, you have to verify all the beneficial owners before you can enter a business relationship with the vendors. One way of checking the beneficial owners of the property is by using the land registry title deed. And you must also verify all purchasers who have had their offer accepted and who will become the new beneficial owner of the property. You do not need to verify people under 18 who will be simply living in the property or cohabitants, i.e. family members, but you need to identify the people who are selling the property and own the property and the people who become the legal property owners. For buying agents, you must verify your client before agreeing to act for them, and you must verify the owner of the property you're agreeing to purchase at the point of the offer being accepted. You have until before the point that the contracts are exchanged to verify your buyer if you're a traditional agent, and the same for buying agents. In terms of the vendors, you must conduct your due diligence before the property is marketed. If you're an auctioneer, you must verify all bidders of the property before the gavel goes down. When dealing with companies, you must identify anyone who owns 25% or more of majority shareholder of the company and then verify those individuals. Lettings agents must carry out checks on tenants, landlords and guarantors. If you're dealing with the occasional transaction payment or someone who may want to pay their rent up front for the year, then you need to verify that tenant as well and look at the source and proof of funds. When dealing with a probate situation, the key people are the executors, and there are certain documents that you can look to evidence of who they are, such as the will, the grant of probate, if it has been granted, or if someone dies without the will, you can look at the grant of administration, which is where this states the appointed executors, which is usually a law firm. You must verify all executors of the will and seek proof of the probate. When dealing with power of attorney situation, you must verify the individuals with power of attorney and try and seek proof of this also. With organisations such as banks, public companies, local authorities, etc., you can simply apply what is known as simplified due diligence, and we shall come on to that more in the following slide. HMRC will check the date on which the property is published against the date your client was verified. Talking about what I spoke about earlier in terms of the vendors need to be AML checked before the property is marketed. In terms of GDPR, you have a legal obligation to ask for the information from your clients, and should your client refuse to provide their details, you must refuse to enter into a business relationship with them and consider reporting this to your money laundering reporting officer. So customer due diligence. I put a simple checklist together for you. And these are the key actions you'll need to be taking and carrying out in order to demonstrate effective customer due diligence, or CDD, and comply with the regulations. As this session is recorded, you can view this after and go through the checklist after if it helps. First of all, you need to ensure your policies and procedures are up to date, including your customer due diligence and enhanced due diligence processes. It does say this at the bottom, but you do need to regularly review this as well. Once a year, once every 6 months, if anything big changes in your business, regularly review them and change the policies and procedures to reflect this every time. Ensure all staff are aware of these and how to carry them out. We've had situations in the past where HMRC have walked into a business and they've said, please show me your money laundering policy. The staff cannot put their hands on it straight away. That goes down as a mark against the business, and you can pretty much ensure an inspection will take place. So all staff really do need to be aware of where these are and how to follow them and carry them out. You need to identify all relevant parties in the transaction, the beneficial owners and purchasers, and that's all the beneficial owners. If there's 2 or 3 beneficial owners of a property, you need to conduct relevant checks on those individuals and you need to identify them. And purchasers that have had their offer accepted, as well as obtaining the legal proof of legitimate funds. Identify PEPs, their relatives and close associates. So when you come to politically exposed people or PEPs, you need to do this for every single individual vendor or purchaser, and you need to identify whether they are a PEP or whether they're a relative or close associate of a PEP as well. Take further steps, if needed, to make a suspicious activity report. If you need to make a suspicious activity report, you need to make sure that the steps are in place that you can enter onto the National Crime Agency. Have a money laundering reporting officer in place or an MLO in place to ensure everyone knows who this is, as well as the deputy if you have one, if the if the money laundering officer is ever absent. Stay on top of the record keeping and provide a clear and consistent audit trail. I suggest on the top of your money laundering policy, you have a checklist. If anything changes, you update the policy. Anything changes significantly within the business, or you run training, jot that down, time and date stamp it to say what you did and when you did it. It shows that you're taking it seriously. And coming on to the final point, continually review the process. Ensure that the required AML procedures are being followed all the time. So audits and continual reviews. So we talked about customer due diligence. Now we talk about enhanced due diligence. The fifth money laundering directive places greater emphasis on the transparency around ultimate beneficial ownership as part of a targeted attempt to fight back against financial crimes or financial criminals, who hide behind often complex or opaque corporate structures. Agents need to apply an increased level of due diligence, or EDD, when dealing with companies and trusts, as HMRC see these as high risk of money laundering. You must identify any more 25% or more stake in a business and unpick any layers of ownership until you reach the ultimate beneficial ownership, or the UBO, of the business. So if someone is hiding property behind 2 people, a company, 3 other companies, you have to go to the final part of that structure to identify the ownership. With trusts, you must find out the trust structure and who is the trustee or trustees in charge. Then in both cases, carry out customer due diligence or enhanced due diligence in line with your risk assessment. The directive also requires increased enhanced due diligence when dealing with transactions from high-risk third countries. Nations deemed to be high risk because of the lack of effective anti-money laundering regulations and due diligence requirements are placed on the EU list of states that require more intensive checks when money is moving into the EU from them. As far as measures go, these include measures for verifying the identity of a or customer or beneficial owner, the intended nature of the business relationship, the source of funds, the wealth of funds, and the beneficial owners, as well as information on the intended or performed transactions. So we've talked about politically exposed people. You'd be forgiven for assuming from the title of this it's just people involved in politics. But as you can see from the list here, a politically exposed person, or PEP, could include members of the courts, boards of central banks, or even high-ranking military officials. You do not only need to identify if your client is politically exposed, but also whether they have any known close associates that are PEPs or not. If you were doing this manually by just asking your client may not know what you mean by when you say PEP, or how best to answer it if they were fraudulent. They would probably answer dishonestly and avoid coming under more scrutiny. Thankfully, the Landmark electronic system can verify this for you without having to ask your client a single question, and it does it in a matter of seconds. If someone is flagged as a PEP, you can still act for them. You just need to apply a greater level of due diligence and make your money laundering officer aware of the individual you're dealing with. I would jot and make more notes on the individual and just apply more scrutiny. So manual versus electronic verification. So now we have recapped what exactly HMRC are looking for to cover off in terms of policy, training, risk assessments, and how best to carry out due diligence. This slide here looks at the 2 main ways people tend to carry out checks, and that is manual versus electronic. Now, I cannot speak for others, also for other AML providers even, but but Landmark checks are available via Street. All you need is the client name, address, and date of birth to be able to run a check on an individual in a low-risk situation. And if further due diligence is required, you can enter an ID number at no extra charge. So let's just look at the manual process first. Manual is open to forgery and tampering. If you're looking at documentation, estate agents many people are not experts. It's difficult to detect a forgery with the human eye. Not everyone can produce standard documentation as well at the same time. How do you check if an individual is a politically exposed person reliably, as they could lie or mislead you? The sanctions and watch list, checking these manually on every client is very time consuming, and there's a fair likelihood things will get. Generally, it's a time consuming process with onboarding clients doing it manually, and utility bills are easily forged, and not everyone has them these days. Now, if you're carrying out electronic checks using the landmark checks through Street, you'd be able to do the following in a matter of seconds. Run a proof of ownership check, first to ensure the individuals do own the property that you're instructed on. Enter the client's name, date of birth and home address. We will check the client against the property proof of address. We will check if the client is politically exposed or not. We will check if there is any negative lists or on any negative lists, such as a worldwide sanctions list or the deceased persons list. This is not open to forgery or misuse like a paper-based check. Onboards your client significantly faster, and you have an online digital audit trail stored in Street. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you found that useful. Now I'm going to hand you back over to Street.
Thanks, Simon. Before we begin, I just want to circle back to what Simon mentioned regarding manual versus electronic compliance checks. How many of you would say that you could be confident in identifying a fake document? I recently read an article where it confirmed that only about 33% of estate agents said they'd be able to confidently identify a fake document, making so many agents vulnerable to the risks associated with non-compliance. Like Simon showed us, there are also constant changes being made to compliance laws, and it can be a huge task to try and keep up with the latest regulations. By choosing electronic AML checks, you'll give your agency an extra layer of protection by working with an expert in the space, mitigate your business risks for greater peace of mind, and help speed up transaction times for you and your clients. Electronic checks also mean that you can reduce your compliance admin by minimizing the time you spend on each check. We all know how stacked an agent's day can get, and these electronic checks save you even more time, which you can put back into other areas of the business. Thanks to our landmark-powered integration, agents using Street can easily navigate through applicant and vendor checks in just a few clicks of a button. I'm going to show you exactly how that would work for your agency with a quick demo of this feature. If you have any questions during the demo, feel free to pop them in the chat box on the screen, and one of our team will reach out to you personally after the webinar's finished. So let's get started. On the right-hand side of a sales listing page within the Street platform, you'll find the vendor compliance card. This provides a clear view of the outstanding checks needed to ensure a vendor can sell their property. To start the identity check, simply click on the green Check Identity box. This will bring up the vendor's details. The name will be pre-populated, along with the address if you have it in Street, saving you time. You can change the address if needed. Enter the vendor's date of birth, and click Run Check when everything looks good. Now, Street will automatically send the data to Landmark's live check service for verification, and the status will update to pending. Additionally, a note will be added to the activity stream highlighting that the check has been submitted. Now we'll just wait for a couple of minutes while Landmark completes the identity check. During this time, we can proceed with the proof of ownership check, which verifies the vendor owns the property they're selling. Similar to the identity check, the name and address will already be in there, but can be edited. Once you submit it, Street will again send this data to Landmark to verify ownership of the address provided, and the status will change to pending. The proof of address check isn't integrated with Landmark. It's a simple manual checkbox to pass or not. Click on the Update button to open the pop-up. Here you'll be able to choose to pass the vendor and set how this check was carried out, including which document was used. Now that we've completed the checks, let's click on the Notifications tab to see if they've been returned. Here we can see that the checks have been returned. Let's click on the vendor identity check that's been completed. Here we have the PDF report sent by Landmark confirming the vendor has passed the identity check. This provides peace of mind and ensures a secure transaction. If for any reason they don't pass the check, or don't pass part of the check, this will flag up as failed or requiring attention. This is the same as all identity and proof of ownership checks within Street. Similarly, we can see the results and view a PDF report for the proof of ownership check with just the click of a button. Now let me quickly demonstrate how to perform an applicant identity check by heading to a property with a recent sales offer. On the right-hand side of the page, you'll find a prompt to complete an applicant check. Just like before, we'll enter the applicant's details. The name will already be in there. And again, if you've got the address on file, it'll pre-populate, so all you have to do is enter the date of birth. Once again, Street fires the information straight across to Landmark, who'll complete the identity check in live time, speeding up the admin process for both you and the applicant. Fantastic! Now the applicant identity check has been sent to Landmark, we can return in a few moments to see the results. During this time, you might want to complete the proof of address check. We can view the results in the same way as we did the vendor check, giving you all of the information you need to either proceed with the sale or flag a potential problem. And that's it. With Street.co.uk's seamless integration with Landmark, performing AML compliance checks has never been easier. These automated checks, priced at just £3 plus VAT per check, provide real-time results, ensuring your agency stays compliant and secure, giving you total peace of mind. And that wraps the demo on our new AML integration with Landmark. If you're already with Street and you want to turn on this feature, reach out to us and we'll switch it on in your account. Like I said earlier, if you have any further questions about any of the processes behind our AML integration, pop them in the chat box now or reach out to us at hello@street.co.uk and we'll follow up with you. And if you'd like to see more of what Street can do, simply click the button on screen now. Before we go, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Landmark, not just for their part in this brilliant integration, but for delivering a clear explanation of agency compliance. And lastly, a huge thank you to you for attending today's webinar. We hope you found it useful. Have a great day.